We do not want that. Why are you doing that? We do not want that at all. Hey, can you explain like the reasoning for that? The science behind that? The logic behind that? Hello! Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for being here. That was super sweet of you. Oh my goodness. I have quite the eye look going on here today. I went with a very intricate graphic liner sort of a thing. I don't know, man. I feel like very powerful in this type of a graphic liner look. Give you the bold red sweater, the bold red butterfly clips. I got some cute little earrings from Mossy Bean here. They have little faces on them. Aren't these just the most fun thing in the world? Oh, and I don't know if I've showed you guys this before, but if you press your fingers down like kind of hard on these earrings, then look at this. Can you see it? Look at the faces on my fingers now. It's on my thumb too. But that's not what this video is about. You did not click on this video to watch me show you my little finger faces, even though they're super cute and like a big perk of these earrings. No, you clicked on this video because you, like me, have an interest in makeup brands I am no longer supporting. I think it's important to talk about brands' controversies, brands' lack of inclusivity, which you're gonna see is like a common theme with all of the brands I'm talking about today, and you know, just giving you some information about some of these makeup brands that maybe you weren't aware of. So if that sounds like a topic that is interesting to you and you want to listen to me talk about some makeup brands I'm no longer supporting, then I encourage you to please subscribe and keep on watching. It's coming at you right now. Okay, so I'm sure you saw their logo in the thumbnail, and that's probably the reason you clicked on this video, so I'll just talk about Colourpop now. So this has been a long time coming with Colourpop for me. I haven't really purchased much from them over the last couple of years. The last palette I purchased from them was the Kathleen Light So Jaded palette. I think that came out in 2019, and the last real thing I purchased from them was like a Fourth Ray Beauty setting spray, which I'm about to run out of, and I'm not repurchasing. I already got an e.l.f. one. But yeah, I've decided to stop supporting Colourpop for the time being, and just before I get into my reasons why, I am going to finish up everything I'm using. I do not want to be wasteful, and I'm not just going to throw away all my Colourpop stuff, but I'm probably going to stop tagging them in Instagram posts and stuff. But the reason I'm not supporting Colourpop anymore is two things. One, lack of inclusivity, and two, absolute wastefulness. I'll talk about the wastefulness first because it's the quicker answer. I mean, you guys know how often Colourpop has new makeup releases. If you follow Colourpop or Trend Mood on Instagram, your feed is probably just filled with new Colourpop releases, and it just keeps getting quicker. And I feel like people complain in their comments constantly. If you look at any comments under a new Trend Mood post about a new Colourpop release, they're all people saying, Colourpop, stop, slow down, this is ridiculous, why won't you just restock things? So I feel like it's a lack of listening to the consumer, and I'm sure they still get their money. I'm sure there's people who are collectors and who still buy every release, or who at least buy a lot of releases, but it's just really not listening to the consumer. And more than that, it's wastefulness, because when you're rapidly producing stuff like that, it's so much waste. You're putting out so much. I also feel like their creativity has like that was a dropping sound for those of you who didn't get it. Their creativity has definitely gone down. I mean, it's been 50 shades of neutral from them. And honestly, 50 is lowballing. It's been like 500 shades of neutral from them for like the last 500 releases. So it's been lack of creativity, it's been overproduction, not listening to the consumers, and now moving on to lack of inclusivity. And I watched a really great video from Amanda BB. That's her username on YouTube. I'll link her video down below. But she talked about, the video is called Colourpop, I have a question for you. And her question was, Colourpop, why do you hate black people? And I highly recommend you watch Amanda's video because she's super thorough. She talks about a pattern of behavior with Colourpop. It's a really, really great video. But one thing that really stuck with me from that video that I think I definitely is coming from a place of privilege and ignorance, that I didn't think about this too hard. Just because a brand has an inclusive foundation and concealer range doesn't mean they're inclusive overall. And I think a lot of people, including myself, have given Colourpop that pass for far too long, where I think about their foundation range and their tinted moisturizers and their concealers, and I think about the fact that they have, I think, 50 shades in some of their foundations, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's an inclusive brand. And I know I've been frustrated with their eyeshadow palettes all looking repetitive and everything, but Amanda pointed out that if you look at all of their eyeshadow palettes, she went through a bunch of their eyeshadow palettes on their website and pointed out which ones would show up on her skin tone, and it was like a couple of shades in a couple of palettes. It was overwhelmingly palettes that she would not be able to use. And she also pointed out that their blushes do not cater to deep skin tones at all. They have like 0 blushes that cater to deep skin tones. And Amanda talked about how Colourpop has kind of been on the decline with inclusivity. She talked about how when Colourpop was a newer brand, they used to have some more inclusive highlighters. She talked about their Super Shock highlighters. I guess there was a shade Avalon, which was kind of like the first deeper shade that would work for some deeper skin tones. And then they had a few shades that ran deeper. And if you look at their website now, they've discontinued all of those shades, which is extremely sketchy. It's not even sketchy. It's just blatantly them choosing not to be inclusive. That's what it is. And that was the main takeaway of Amanda's video, was that don't think of this as an oversight. This is intentional. This is them saying they do not care to cater to deeper skin tones, and we need to take that for what it is and hold them accountable for it and not support them until they change. And that's the overall theme for this video, okay? I'm not canceling any brands. I'm not here to say I will never buy from them again, but I definitely will not support them until they make some concrete changes, and them posting a collage of black people in June is not enough for them to suddenly be inclusive. And another thing I want to mention here is the hashtag Colourpop Me Black movement that Neon MUA and Killer King started on Twitter and on Instagram, which was these 2 makeup artists were calling on Colourpop to post more black people on their feed, because if you looked at their feed, it was overwhelmingly white people. You would have to scroll for a long time to find like one black makeup artist here or there that they would repost. So they were having everybody hashtag Colourpop Me Black so that Colourpop could see it and that they could actually start posting more black people. And then Colourpop posts that collage of black makeup artists in June, that most of which were people who had used the Colourpop Me Black hashtag, and they just didn't even mention it. So then of course everybody got in their comments and was like, hey, you need to credit the makeup artists that created this hashtag that you were able to find these artists from. Like, don't just ignore it. And it took them being called out and ridiculed for it for them to finally give some credit to Neon MUA and Killer King. And it's just like, it shouldn't have to be like that. It's like pulling teeth with Colourpop to get them to be inclusive. And that's just not a brand I want to give my money to. It's not a brand that I want to support. Even if they had incredible eyeshadow products, even if they had incredible makeup that I really liked, I still wouldn't support them, you know, because that's not okay. Especially when there's so many indie brands that are super inclusive and come out with eyeshadow palettes that work for multiple skin tones. Midas Cosmetics came out with their 2 versions of their pastel palette, one that would work on deeper skin tones and one that would work on lighter skin tones. Like, there are brands doing the work to be inclusive, also who are owned by people of color, that you can support over Colourpop, and I don't see the need to support Colourpop right now. One, I'm not impressed with the product. One, I'm not impressed with the rapid releases. One, I'm not impressed, this is 3, I don't know why I keep saying 1. 3, I'm not impressed with their lack of listening to the consumer when we tell them to slow down and when we tell them to stop releasing the same 4 shades every time. And 4, they clearly have shown that they do not care to cater to their consumers that have deeper skin, and that's not okay. So yeah, I know I rambled about that for a long time, but I still highly recommend you watch Amanda's video. It is so thorough, and she goes through all of the products. She goes through the timeline of Colourpop and how their lack of inclusivity has been on the decline essentially since the start. So yeah, Colourpop is a makeup brand that I am no longer supporting for the time being. Okay, the next brand I want to talk about should come as no surprise. It's Morphe. I don't support Morphe. I haven't supported Morphe for a while now. The last thing I ordered from them was the James Charles X Morphe palette, so like that came out in 2018. I got hit to Morphe like not too long after that, but there is so much bad about Morphe. I could sit here and talk for literally hours about it, but I'm gonna link Smoky Glow Hannah's video down below where she talked about the evolution of Morphe, and she really goes into like the nitty-gritty of why they suck. But I will tell you my reasons for why I think they suck, and the easy one is just to say that they don't make high quality makeup and they overcharge for their products. Even using the James Charles palette, which I liked that it was a colorful palette, especially, you know, as a makeup beginner when I bought it. I was still like just getting into eyeshadow. It was not a good quality palette, and for them to charge what they charge for their palettes, Morphe does this thing where they try to make you feel like you're getting a good deal because they give you so much eyeshadow, but you never end up using all of the eyeshadow in the palette, and also there's a bunch of repetitive shades in the palette, so you're really just overpaying for a palette that you're only ever going to feasibly use like a third of. So no, you're not getting a good deal at all. So that's my big gripe with that there. Like, even people who don't care about brands ethics or anything, you gotta care about getting a good deal, and you're not getting a good deal. They're fooling you into thinking that you're getting a good deal. Also, influencer marketing, a totally fine thing to do. Absolutely fine. I'm totally cool with brands doing discount codes and everything. I have no problem with that. My issue with Morphe is that back in, I think it was 2016, Hannah said in her video, back when they were kind of first starting to pick up, they did not make their influencers disclose that their codes were discount codes, and that's a huge FTC violation. That is a huge violation of your audience's trust to not know that somebody is making money off of their discount code. Like, you'll notice I have some links in my description whenever I put links to the makeup products I'm wearing, and I have links next to those products, but I also have a disclaimer underneath that lets you know that those are affiliate links. That is because, one, I want you to trust me. I don't want to lie to you about me making money off of something, but also it's an FTC requirement. Like, you have to do that. You have to disclose to your audience when you're making money off of something, and Morphe did not make their influencers do that, which one could argue like, oh, is that really their responsibility? I think so. I definitely think it is. When you give out a discount code to influencers, you should say to them like, hey, just make sure you inform people that this is in fact a discount code that you are earning a commission on. It is an affiliate code, not just a discount code. You know, people were pushing their discount codes. No, call it what it is. It's an affiliate code. You are earning money off of it. It is affiliate marketing, which again is a totally fine thing to have. You just have to be honest with your audience about it, and Morphe did not make their influencers do that, so we already don't like that. They also do the Colourpop thing where they release products way too often. I can't believe that Colourpop has kind of surpassed them with the rapid releases. Amanda in her video was calling Colourpop Morphe 2.0 because they basically have adopted the Morphe model where now they come out with a bunch of mega palettes that are super repetitive and they release things rapidly. So they have that in common with the rapid releases and the huge palettes with all of the repetitive shades. But then obviously Morphe also works with a ton of problematic people, which I don't like. They've worked with Jeffree Star. I know they tried to cut ties with him after the big like summer scandal, but it shouldn't have taken people mass calling them out for them to do that. Like, they basically did that to try to save their business. It didn't feel like a move they did because they thought it was the right thing to do. Oh, also remember when they released like 60 shades of foundation, but they were still not suited for deeper skin tones? How do you do that? It was so blatantly performative because I remember watching Alyssa Ashley did a review. I think I watched Nima Tang's review, and they were both like, they have the shade range, but the undertones are all wrong. So it's clearly showing that they don't have a diverse production team that was able to say like, hey, it's great you have 60 shades, but these don't actually work on deeper skin tones, you know? So there's clearly a lack of inclusivity there. There's so much wrong with Morphe. I mean, please watch Hannah's video because it's super, super thorough. She talks about the whole history of how they started. She talks about how they started with using private labeling and then kind of didn't disclose to people that it was private labeling. Definitely watch Hannah's video. But Morphe is a makeup brand that I no longer support. Oh boy, this is like a ranty video. I'm sorry, I didn't mean for it to be so ranty, but you know what? I gotta tell the people the information, and in case you didn't know this, I need to let you know. Let's talk about Anastasia Beverly Hills. I no longer am supporting ABH, and that is, oh boy, for a bunch of things. So we all remember 2019 when they launched their first collab ever. They did a collab palette with Alyssa Edwards, which looked perfectly lovely. I didn't buy it because it wasn't my color scheme, but then a few weeks later, maybe a month later, they announced the Jackie Aina palette, which I have and love, and I still love, and I will still stand the Jackie Aina palette until the day I die. Yes, it was worth me taking out because it is a beautiful palette. Okay, but then literally a week later, they announced the Carly Bible palette, and then literally like days after that, Norvina came out with like 3 more palettes, and then they came out with another palette, and everyone was like, hey, what's going on? What are you you doing? And basically they would respond in the comments. I don't know if it was Anastasia or Norvina responding, or a social media person, but when people would ask them, like, why are you releasing so much at once? This is too much. We as the consumers are overwhelmed. We do not like this. They basically said that they were doing this to keep up with the market, and that this is what the beauty market was calling for right now, and this is what the consumers wanted. And the consumers were like, no, we do not want that. Why are you doing that? We do not want that at all. And so just kind of with Colourpop, a lack of listening to the consumers about rapid releases. We hate that. We don't like that at all. And then also over the summer, Sharon Shooter, who is the CEO of Oma Beauty, started the Pull Up or Shut Up movement, which she called on specifically beauty brands and fashion brands to disclose their company breakdown of basically a diversity report. I forget what it was called, but she basically wanted to know what percentage of people in leadership roles were Black people. And Anastasia Beverly Hills was one of the brands that never disclosed their breakdown. They just put out like a wimpy little statement of being like, we at ABH promised to do better. We'll do better, we promise. And everyone was like, okay, so was the answer 0? Was the answer really bad? Like, why couldn't you just give an answer? But then people started to bring up some old Glassdoor reviews, which Glassdoor is something that you can like review a company you've worked for. Like, former employees can go and fill out a survey of how their time working there was. And ABH has some bad Glassdoor reviews. People did not have a good time working for Anastasia Beverly Hills. They essentially said it's a nightmare to work there. Employees said that if you work there, expect to be severely taken advantage of, expect to be asked to come in on weekends, expect to be asked to do way more than you're being paid for. And they also said that Norvina conducts business around like astrology and around like she won't do business deals if Mercury is in retrograde. And don't get me wrong, I'm an astrology lady. I love astrology. I love figuring out where the moon is. I'm a Virgo sun, a Sagittarius moon. I'm a Libra rising. I'm a Scorpio Venus. We could sit here and talk all day about astrology. I love astrology. But you can't run a business like that. You can't not do business deals just because Mercury is in retrograde. You know, that's not how it works. And it just seems like she was awful to her employees, and I don't like that. As somebody who has worked for companies where I've been treated poorly as an employee and asked to do way more work than I was being paid for, I could never support a company that I know is doing the same thing. So that is my big reason for not supporting Anastasia Beverly Hills at all. And I'm sure I'm forgetting something. I'm sure Hannah has a video on ABH. I think she does. I'll link it down below if she does. But yeah, ABH is not a company I'm gonna support because lack of inclusivity within the company ranks. I don't know so much about, I've never tried their foundations or anything. I can't recall right now if they have a decent shade range. I don't think they've been called out specifically. Oh, they're also a little dumb. So they posted on, I have to mention this real quick. They posted on their Twitter account yesterday that if you have oily skin, you should buy their luminous foundation in a cool undertone. Like, that makes no sense. Even as someone who is not a skincare expert, I know that makes no sense. So a bunch of people were replying to it, just basically being like, hey, can you explain like the reasoning for that, the science behind that, the logic behind that? And then somebody tagged Robert Welch, and Robert Welch was like, hey, no, this is not true at all. You should always buy your foundation in your correct undertone. And ABH ended up deleting the tweet later, but it was just so funny. It was just, I needed a laugh yesterday, and it was a good laugh, so I guess I thank them for that. That's not a reason I'm not supporting them. That was just like kind of a silly thing. But yeah, that's a good wrap up there. Anastasia Beverly Hills is a makeup brand that I am no longer supporting. Okay, so for my last one, I want to talk about Hourglass briefly, and this is the only brand I'm talking about today that I have never supported because I cannot afford to, because they are very expensive, but I still wanted to mention it because I am actively choosing to not save up my money for any Hourglass products, which I had been previously, because Hourglass is another brand that's just not inclusive. I talked about this on my channel in an anti-haul recently, but so Hourglass got called out because this one palette, which I always forget the name of, it's like the Lumiere palette. It's a face palette. It has like a bronzer shade, a blush shade, and a highlight shade. And it was offered in just this one shade. But they took it off the market last year to reformulate it, and everybody assumed, okay, they're gonna come out with more shades now. This is great. They're taking the time. They're reworking it. So they re-released it like a month ago, and how many shades is it in? Still 1. So that sucks. That shows a complete lack of inclusivity, a complete lack of caring about making a product more inclusive, because it's not like people didn't tell them. People have been telling them. People were like, hey, this is great, but I would love to be able to recommend this to friends, and I can't because it doesn't work for everybody's skin tone. And Hourglass just chose not to do that. And then a couple weeks ago, they dropped the Ambient Lighting Volume 2 palette, which is not the same as this palette. This is a powder product, and they dropped it in a Volume 2, which was supposed to work for deeper skin tones, even though, like, looking at this, I don't really see how that can happen. But then at first people were like praising them. They were like, wow, they really listened, and they took, they took the note, they listened to the consumer, and they're inclusive now. And then people realized that they were not new shades they developed. These were all pre-existing shades that they basically just like took the deepest shades they did have and put them in one palette, which this is the deepest shades you have. Oh my god, how embarrassing, how awful, how absolutely awful. And yeah, so it was a surprise. It was performative, which we all expected, and people pointed out that it doesn't even really work on deeper skin tones. And they said Volume 3 coming at the end of the year. That's not how releases work, you know? And this all comes back to what Amanda was saying about not just focusing on a foundation range. You know, when we think of inclusivity, I think, especially white people, myself included, we think about foundation immediately, right? But you can't just think about foundation. That's not the only part of your makeup routine. We don't just slap on foundation and walk out the door, you know? You have to think of everything, and face palettes, bronzer, blush, and highlight is a key part of most people's makeup routines. So if you don't have inclusive palettes for those, what are you supposed to do? And so as I was saying, yeah, they said they're releasing the Volume 3 at the end of the year. Imagine if you released a foundation range that way. Imagine if you released the lightest shades in January, the medium shades in June, and then the deepest shades in December. That would be absolutely horrendous. People would call them out immediately and be like, hey, you can't do that. That's so non-inclusive. What the hell? But because it's a face palette, I don't think people think about it as much. Like, but if you put it into foundation terms, I think it's just so much more cut and dry of like, oh, they don't care to cater to deeper skin tones. They have made this abundantly clear, and we need to just call it what it is and not support them anymore. To be so blatantly clear about the customer you're catering towards, and for that customer to only be people with lighter skin tones, is just, it's awful. And they should be embarrassed, and they should do better, or just don't do it all. Just don't be a makeup brand. If you don't want to cater to everybody, then find a different industry to go through. But yeah, Hourglass sucks. We're not supporting them anymore. I hope that they do better in the future, but they have proven time and time again that as much as they are called out, they do not do anything to change. So I hope that that changes in the future, but I'm also not hopeful for it. So Hourglass, get out of here. I'm not supporting you anymore. I never have, because I do not have the money, but I am continuing not to support them. All right, and with that, we have reached the end of the video. There are so many more brands I could talk about. I mean, if you want to see a part 2, let me know, because I definitely have a lot more I could talk about, but I know I've already been ranting for a long time, and I don't want the video to be too long. But yeah, there are a ton of brands out there that are just showing time and time again that they don't care to cater to the entirety of the beauty industry, which is people with fair skin tones, but also people with deep skin tones. And you gotta cater to that whole range. You can't just pick one end of the spectrum. A lot of these brands are just showing that they don't care to. They're showing that they don't care to listen to the consumer. They're showing that they don't care about the environment by rapidly releasing products. And that's just all stuff that needs to be left in 2020. Truthfully, it should have been left in 2010, because it's been wrong the whole time. That's the thing. I think sometimes we as white people talk about stuff, you know, like suddenly we're woke and it's like, oh, this is happening for the first time now. Leave that in 2020. That's 2020 stuff. No, this shouldn't have been happening the whole time. This has been bad the whole time, and it's great that people are coming around and starting to call out brands now, but black people have been saying this the whole time. As Amanda said in her video, she's been calling out Colourpop since 2017. She talks about how she ordered the Yes Please palette, which I think was maybe their first palette, at least one of their their first palettes, and even then she said the shades did not work for her skin tone. So Colourpop has kind of been doing that from the start, and I think we just need to keep holding these brands accountable, you know? What are we afraid of? What's the point? We're the consumer. We're who they're catering to. If we call them out and don't support them, that might be the way to change things. I don't know if these brands will ever change. I worry, especially with Colourpop, that there are just so many people who will buy stuff from them forever, no matter what they're doing. But you know, it doesn't hurt to try. It doesn't hurt to do a little boycott to see if that actually makes some changes. It's the makeup consumer that is making them all of their money, you know? So if we don't consume the products, then maybe they will make the changes necessary to become more inclusive and to become just more ethical brands. So let me know what makeup brands you're not supporting anymore. Are there any makeup brands you're not supporting? I'd love to hear your thoughts on everything I said today. I enjoyed ranting about these brands, you know? I feel like I said, watch all the videos I linked down below, especially Amanda's. If you can only watch one video, please watch Amanda's video. I think I posted it to my community tab yesterday too, so hopefully you've already seen it. But yeah, these are all brands I'm no longer supporting. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel. I post new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and sometimes Saturday, sometimes the occasional Saturday bonus video. Those are always fun. Check out my description box for everything on my face today. Those links are affiliate. Also in my description box, there is a bunch of Black Lives Matter resources. I have petitions to sign, places to donate, and ways to help protesters. Those links are always available to you in every description box of all of my videos. I thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!